A reading from the Gospel of Mark. Again he entered the synagogue, and a man was there who had a withered hand. They watched him to see whether he would cure him on the Sabbath, so that they might accuse him. And he said to the man who had the withered hand, "Come forward." Then he said to them, "Is it lawful to do good or to do harm on the Sabbath, to save life or to kill?" But they were silent. He looked around at them with anger. He was grieved at their hardness of heart, and said to the man, "Stretch out your hand." He stretched it out, and his hand was restored. The Pharisees went out and immediately conspired with the Herodians against him, how to destroy him. Mark has given us another Sabbath story of Jesus acting out on the Sabbath, doing good, healing, and the Pharisees being upset about that. I don't want to come down too hard on the Pharisees. I think it's wonderful for a community, a society, to have people attentive to the law and protecting something as important as Sabbath, a day that we should rest. But Jesus isn't really violating that or working. He's healing and hopefully helping to remember that these laws that we create, they're all about people and helping us navigate more so than hindering. And enter the man with the withered hand. I also think it's wonderful that they're all at church. Jesus came to the synagogue, the man with the withered hand, the Pharisees. I think coming to church is important for the new year, for every year. But back to this man with the withered hand, I'm especially zeroed in on him. I can identify briefly, once years ago, I broke my wrist, and it was extremely difficult and painful to navigate society, navigate spaces with one hand, one working hand. I became extremely sensitive to the plight of people with disabilities. That was just temporary, and it was very, very difficult to navigate. I can only imagine it's much more long-term disabilities. But Jesus has that compassion. Jesus has that insight and offers healing. We come to churches with all kinds of disabilities, really, whether it's a withered hand, a withered spirit, a withered mind. And I think it's wonderful that there are opportunities for restoration when we gather. And we get to see an emotional side of Jesus. I remember our provost preaching a few weeks ago about Jesus experiencing joy. Today, Jesus experiences anger and sadness. It says he was sad over their hardness of heart and angry that they had kind of forgotten the purpose of the laws in the first place. Jesus' anger moves him to restore the man's hand and to create spaces, a more just and equitable places for us to gather. As I mentioned early, it's very, very important for us to create safe spaces, welcoming spaces for everyone, especially people with disabilities. We really have to be sensitive to that. One of the churches I serve is a smaller, aging congregation, wonderful people, but all of us, it takes a little longer to get up those stairs. Some of us are not able to at all. And we had to get a lift, an elevator, to help many of us navigate the different floors and all of those steps. We couldn't really afford it, but then again, we couldn't afford not to, because we wanted to be a welcoming space for everyone. Jesus has this sensitivity that the synagogue should be a place for healing for everyone, especially this man with the withered hand. I invite you this year to tap into that anger of Jesus, the type that leads to action and leads to justice and leads to good works. May we all have that type of motivation that would trigger our compassion to see where the needs are met. It doesn't have to be large, but something to make it easier for someone else, for we certainly want that assistance when we need it. May God bless you. Amen.